Legendary golfer Tiger Woods hospitalized after that terrifying rollover accident in Southern California.
And overnight, we heard from Tiger's camp for the very first time. They tweeted he is awake, responsive, and recovering after emergency surgery to repair significant injuries to his legs.
Let's walk you through how everything played out. The accident happened at 8:12 Eastern time, about 30 miles south of L.A. It was so severe, Woods needed to be extricated from his badly damaged SUV.
4 hours later, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department tweeted about the crash. And then during their first news conference, officials revealed Tiger was conscious when the first deputy arrived on the scene, that they are looking into speed as a possible factor in the crash, and that there was no immediate evidence that Tiger was impaired in any way.
Yeah, we have full coverage for you, including an interview with the deputy who kept Woods talking until the emergency crews arrived at the scene. But we will begin with Craig, who made his way out to California overnight. Hey, Craig, good morning.
Oda, Savannah, good morning to both of you. We are outside Harbor UCLA Hospital. This is where Tiger Woods underwent that surgery for several hours after that terrible crash. He is recovering here this morning. Overnight, the hospital revealing in a statement that Woods suffered catastrophic injuries, leaving his career in doubt. Authorities say the investigation could take weeks to complete. They're going to be looking into whether distracted driving or speed were factors. And there's a black box in that SUV that could hold some crucial information.
We have a rollover with someone trapped.
The victim of that terrifying crash, golfing great Tiger Woods. Overnight, his official Twitter account reassuring fans that he's currently awake, responsive, and recovering in his hospital room. The 45-year-old suffered multiple injuries to both legs and was rushed to a local trauma center where he underwent several hours of surgery. Doctors revealing in a statement, Woods fractured his tibia and fibula, the leg bones below the knee, and had to use a rod to stabilize them. They also inserted screws and pins into his foot and ankle.
I will say that it's very fortunate that Mr. Woods was able to come out of this alive.
Sheriff's Deputy Carlos Gonzalez was the first on the scene.
I asked him what his name was. He told me his name was Tiger, and at that moment I immediately recognized him. He seemed as though he was lucid and calm.
Woods' SUV, which was traveling at a greater than normal rate of speed, according to authorities, flipped over multiple times.
No skid marks, no braking. So apparently the first contact was with the center median, and from there then crossed into opposing lane of traffic, hit the curb, hit a tree, and there was several rollovers during that process.
Images of his wrecked SUV, shocking. The front end completely torn off.
Just look at that vehicle and literally broke apart there.
All of the SUV's airbags deployed, some stained with blood, debris strewn everywhere, including golf tees. First responders forced to use an axe and a pry bar to remove the windshield to extract Woods from the SUV. So far, the exact cause of the crash unknown.
Deputies at the time, they did not see any evidence of impairment, anything that of concern.
The accident happened in the coastal community of Rancho Palos Verdes, an area known for winding, hilly roads.
It slopes and it also curves. That area has a high frequency of accidents. It's not uncommon.
Woods was behind the wheel of what appears to be the same vehicle in this photo taken over the weekend at the PGA Tour's Genesis Invitational. The accident coming just 2 months after Tiger's 5th major back surgery, something he talked about at the tournament on CBS.
You feeling all right? I'm feeling fine. I'm a little bit stiff. I'm still in the gym, still doing the mundane stuff that you have to do for rehab.
Joining us now, Deputy Carlos Gonzalez with the LA County Sheriff's Department. He was the first responder at the scene of that accident here on Tuesday. Deputy Gonzalez, good morning to you. Thanks for your time.
Good morning.
So let's start. 712 911 call comes in, as I understand it, roughly 6 minutes later. You're there at the scene. Takes you a few moments to actually get to the SUV. When you arrive there, what did you see?
That's right. We arrived there within minutes of the 911 call. First thing that I notice is there's a vehicle on the side about 40 feet off of the roadway. you never know with these sort of collisions what sort of state the occupants are going to be in. So immediately the neighbor that actually called 911 told me, Deputy, I think someone's still inside the vehicle. So I run over and I'm able to get my upper body through the windshield, and that's where I discover Mr. Woods sitting in the driver's seat of the vehicle.
Was he saying anything at that point?
You know what? He wasn't. I saw his eyes because it was dark in there, and my first role as a first responder is to assess the passenger and the occupants of the vehicle, and I want to keep them calm as well. So I ask him, hey, can you tell me your first name? He looked at me and he said, Tiger. And it took me a half second, but I saw his face and I thought, oh yeah, you're Tiger Woods. But of course, I've got a job to do, so I immediately went into assessment questions to kind of gauge what his condition was in and what his mental state was at the time.
At what point did you decide to not try and extricate him yourself, that you needed to call the fire department to have them come and get him out?
When I noticed that Mr. Woods he seemed calm, he didn't seem like he was in distress, and he was able to kind of talk to me a little bit. And I noticed the passenger compartment seemed mostly intact, and he didn't seem like he was in any further danger. And I did consider pulling him out myself, but I decided that it would be better to wait for the fire department, since they have the specialized tools and training to remove people safely from vehicles like that.
You said he was talking to you. What was Tiger saying to you in those moments?
I kept him talking, so I asked him basic things to gauge his mental state, like, do you know where you are right now? Do you know what day it is? Just to see if he was aware of what had occurred.
Did he seem aware of his injuries at all at that point?
He didn't mention anything. I don't think he was aware of how gravely he was injured at the time. It could be a mixture of adrenaline. It could have been shock. Again, it was very quick, the moment that I arrived, from the moment that he had rolled over. So I don't know if he had time to fully assess his injuries.
In your line of work, I know you see a lot of vehicle accidents. You said yesterday that you were somewhat surprised that Tiger made it out alive. What was different about this accident?
This accident was, I would say, traumatic in many ways. I think there was a lot of energy, obviously, that went into the speeds that made the vehicle travel the distance that it did, the fact that it rolled, the injuries that Mr. Woods sustained. And I've seen collisions that didn't look as serious, where the occupants were injured much more severely. And I think that's just a testament to the fact that he was wearing a seatbelt, the airbags worked as intended, and modern vehicles are much more safe than they ever used to be.
Law enforcement officials seemed somewhat adamant on Tuesday that there were no signs of impairment. You were there on the scene.
Right.
Was there a toxicology report ordered at the scene, to your knowledge, or after the fact?
I'm not aware of any toxicology. That's beyond my purview. At the scene, we're looking for evidence of intoxication, like if there's an odor of an alcoholic beverage, or if there's an open container or prescription medication. At this time,
you saw none of that.
At this time, we didn't see any evidence of impairment, and anything beyond that in terms of medical toxicology, I wouldn't be aware at this time.
Officer Gonzalez, how are you feeling this morning?
I'm fine. I have a lot of sympathy for Mr. Woods, because I'm sure he's going through something very traumatic, and I'm sure he's going through a lot of pain. So, I'm hoping for a speedy recovery for him.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Deputy Carlos Gonzalez, guys. We'll send it back to you there in New York.
All right, Craig, thank you. We want to turn now to our senior medical correspondent, Dr. John Torres, for more on his injuries, Tiger's injuries, his road to recovery. And I just want to put up that statement again, because there was a lot of detail there. But Dr. Torres, you understand this better than we do. When you say a comminuted open fracture affecting both the upper and lower portions of the tibia and fibula bones, describe what that means. I looked up that word. It does not sound good.
And you're right, Savannah, it doesn't sound good, and it's not good for his recovery. Comminuted basically means that bone was broken in multiple parts. It was not just a clean fracture. He had multiple fractures, so when they go in surgically, they have to repair all those pieces, piece them all back together and make sure it's stable. The open part means that it has broken through the skin. The concern there, once it breaks through the skin, is there's a high degree of possibility of infection, not just to the skin, but to the bone itself. And that's when you can start having complications. So between those two things, they had required a lot of surgery to get that bone back to where it's supposed to be and get that bone stable, Savannah.
Dr. Torres, there's a lot of talk about pins and rods and things like that. But before it even got to that level, there was something else in the doctor's statement that kind of jumped out to, I think, a lot in the medical profession. It said this: trauma to the muscle and soft tissue of the leg required surgical release of the covering muscles to relieve pressure. What did that mean?
So, Hoda, when it comes to emergencies with leg injuries, this is one of the true emergencies. What happens is pressure starts building up because of swelling in that part of the leg, and it builds up to such a high point that it cuts off circulation and it causes nerve damage if it's not taken care of quickly. And so what surgeons do is they go in and they basically release that pressure by opening up the muscle, exposing it to the outside so that it has a way to relieve the pressure, and that lets the circulation flow, that lets the nerve not be damaged. That's the true emergency behind everything that's happened here to Tiger.
And what was the worry there if they weren't able to do that?
The big concern was amputation, because if he doesn't get that done quickly, and by quickly I mean within an hour or so, he could be looking at an amputation of that leg.
Well, and now let's talk about recovery. A little later, we're going to talk to Mike Tirico about his sports future. But the more immediate concern is having to learn to walk again. What does that rehab and recovery look like? And is the prognosis good?
So he has around 6 weeks of recovery just from the fractures. But if you look at the fractures, he's got fractures to the leg, multiple fractures. He also has fractures to the foot and ankle. And depending on what they had to do to the ankle, that's going to be the hard recovery period. So he's going to get the usual post-recovery from a fracture, muscle atrophy, having to go back and learn how to walk again to make sure he builds up that muscle. That's going to take a few months. But if he had to get that ankle fused, or if he had any big procedures done to that ankle, they're going to limit mobility, that's going to take longer to recover. And he truly might never get that mobility back he had before, which could definitely impact the way he plays.
All right, Dr. Torres, always good to get an ER doc, a trauma doc, his expertise on a morning like this. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You bet.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Find your favorite recipes, celebrity interviews, uplifting stories, shop our favorite deals, and so much more with the Today app. Download it now.